Welcome to Negotiating Happiness, the show that helps you find happiness, success, and balance in your work and life. I'm Adriana Fiestro, your host for this journey into entrepreneurship and personal growth. We're broadcasting live on 107.7 and 105.3 FM in New Orleans as part of the United Public Radio Network. We explore the latest strategies, insights, and stories from successful entrepreneurs and experts. From managing stress to building a thriving business, we've got you covered. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Adriana Fiestro, and you are listening to Negotiating Happiness. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And if you feel like kicking back and watching some TV, do find us on Roku TV as well by typing in the channel UFO Paranormal. So today is February 26th, 2024. I still can't believe we're in 2024 already. Again, I'm Adriana, and I am here today with the lovely Jane Allison from Dovetail Community in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Hello, Jane. How are you?
Hello. This is awesome. So good to be with you.
I'm so excited that we got you to come on here today because I feel like we've got so much to learn from you. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Oh, well, it's my honor. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to do a really quick intro here for everybody that's tuning in. We are going to be live in the comments if you have any questions, and we are also live on Instagram. We are we're kind of navigating that right now since Instagram is kind of a separate part of our streaming board here at the station. So if you guys have any questions and you're on Instagram, just keep in mind there's a little bit of a delay, but please, we welcome your comments and questions. I just wanted to give you a quick intro here. So Jane was lovely and decided to come on today to talk to us a little bit about PR and discovering some of the myths and what it means to actually fail. So who is Jane? Jane is an award-winning community advocate and communications professional and is the principal of Dovetail Community. It is a firm devoted to counseling, connecting, and mentoring organizations. Oh, excuse me, I'm just getting over being sick, so bear with me, folks. She's mentoring organizations about community impact and development, as well as PR communications, strategies, and facilitation. She was the manager of community partnerships at the Hamilton Spectator for more than 11 years. After being at the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board for almost 9 years in the role of public relations officer. Jane is a frequent speaker, moderator, and host for events, workshops, and teaching sessions, and has launched 2 podcasts, Sideroads and Tangents. She is a graduate of University of Guelph and the postgraduate public relations program at Humber College. Jane has been named a Canadian Public Relations Society Diamond Jubilee Mentor of the Year. In 2021, Dovetail Community was named the Diamond Level PR firm, the Hamilton Spectator's Reader's Choice Awards. She has been designated a fellow by the Canadian Public Relations Society of Canada. My goodness. I'm so glad to have you on.
Oh, thanks.
With a resume like that, come on.
Well, it sounds, the certain words like a fellow, what does that mean? That's the old guard terminology, but it's quite meaningful all the same. But yeah, it's, you give someone enough time to ply their trade and good stuff can happen.
That's right. That's right. And I'm sure you've got so much more to go. So tell us a little bit about, so the way that we usually kind of do the show is we talk a lot about entrepreneurship and what are the whys and what, kind of pushes you to move forward. And then at some point in the show, we'll get really real and we'll talk about the good and the bad. And we also talk about what makes you happy, kind of what makes this worth it. So let's start off a little bit about, how did Dovetail come about?
Interesting. So a bit of background. Public relations and communications is one of those professions that can easily lend itself to setting up your own practice, being a freelancer. And certainly many of my friends and colleagues had done that over the years. I never once wanted to do that. I loved being part of an organization. I love direct deposit paychecks. Don't get me wrong. but there was just I loved working with a team towards a common goal or regular milestones, and so I was perfectly happy working the way I was, which is part of various things: corporate sectors, not for profit, private sector, and the Hamilton Spectator was a dream job, really, for so long. Until it wasn't, until media started shifting a bit as we've seen it to continue to do so in the last few years. But I thought I would stay at the Spectator for a long time. And then they eliminated my position and my department and my budget and my job. And so what does one do? And I was really lucky. I mean, it was a shock, a complete shock. A lot of people could consider it a failure. I don't at this point, and we can dive into that a bit later too, I think. But after the initial shock, and it was maybe like, I felt lucky. I had a lot of support, but maybe about 2 weeks, I had this brainstorm, this epiphany, that given what had happened, even though it was fairly dramatic, it still wasn't the worst thing that was ever going to happen to me. And in fact, it wasn't the worst thing that had happened to me even at that point. And I've had a pretty great life. So what I mean by that is, we all go through stuff, and we lose people too soon, and the really big stuff. And so I knew at that point that it would be a big bump in the road, but it wasn't going to derail me permanently. And so once I realized that, Adriana, I felt free, like I could fly. And listen, I'll be honest, having a great package really helped. Like, they were fair, and I had a very good severance, which not everybody can say that. So I felt lucky that way. And what it gave me was time to think and to ponder.
Right.
And
Isn't
I
that
don't
the
know
greatest
about
gift? Time.
oh, so good, so good.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing we'll never earn back, isn't it? Is time. So
That's
I
right.
took that time, and I thought about what to do. And it's funny, I say my lawyer, like my lawyer, but I obviously had a lawyer during this severance period, and he was the first one to say, "Oh, now you can set up your own shop." And I said, "I don't think so." Like, I was very resistant to it. And a few other people, maybe suggested that. And that expression of the universe starts off with a little whisper, and then it's a shout. And then, that was true in this case. But so I started pondering it and thinking about it, and and I don't know. And I think I was nervous about it, quite frankly. Like, the idea of selling your services, which of course ends up not what you're doing at all. You're being of service, and that's a whole different mindset. But I
100%.
kind of was getting into that mode a bit, but it took a few months. And then it took I knew I needed someone to kind of talk this through with. And so a great friend of mine, David Love, who had just at that time set up his own fundraising agency in Vancouver called Love Fundraising. Isn't that a fantastic name? And he and I had met the first day of the public relations program at Humber. And we'd been friends all that time. And that was a number of years at that point. And so I said, "Hey, how about we go away for a few days, and I can pick your brain, and we can talk about stuff." And we so lucky that in those days it was very inexpensive to travel to Palm Springs, which is where we went. So I was quite deliberate about it. I thought, I need something that's the same time zone as David's in, and that would provide this sort of escape vacation feel without it being a big production. Anyway, Palm Springs was our place. And so we talked and ate and drove around and looked at architecture, which is my secret passion, and talked more. And by the end of that trip, I came home knowing I would start what became Dovetail.
I love that you
Yeah,
touched on a little bit of everything that's kind of
yeah,
entrepreneurship, because I
yeah.
talk a lot about one of the reasons why I started this platform is to have what you have with David, right? To have that kind of back and forth, to
Hmm.
learn from each other and to just help each other, which is so wonderful to have. And not that, you don't have a supportive, family or friends. It's just, it's not the same when they're not in the same space as you, right? So
Right.
that's so important. And I hear a lot of these stories, and including my own, something wonderful came out of a at first seemed not a positive experience, right? Yes, and I love
Exactly.
that because it kind of helps you switch your mindset to say, and you may not be into, I love this term these days, might be all woo woo or into
Mm.
like the whole universe whispering. I am, but even if you're not, it's a really good lesson to learn that it all depends on perspective. It all depends on what you want to do next and what are you willing to work for it,
Yeah.
right? And then that could completely change your life, which is, it's so amazing to hear.
It is, and I first of all, I'm totally into the woo woo, so no problem.
I love
Uh,
it.
and
This
and
is
I
the
believe,
place to be then.
and I believe in symbols and signs, and I think there's no such thing as coincidences and that sort of stuff. Um, what was fascinating to me at that time is how quickly things sort of lined up. Um, Great friends of mine, you've had her on your podcast, Jen Hutter, now of
Oh, I love
Honeyflow
Jen.
Coaching.
Yep.
Um, she was part owner of a graphic design and creative studio at that
Mm-hmm.
point, and
Mm-hmm.
those good folks said, "Hey, we can. How about maybe you hang around our place and call it a workspace and just see what happens, and maybe there's some synergy. And oh, by the way, we could help you with your brand and coming up with a name." And I thought, okay, fantastic. And I think having a place to go and creative people to talk with and bounce these ideas off of, and help you get launched, left me feeling as if I had wings, like that this situation had given me wings versus weights. And so that's what happened. They did this fabulous marketing discovery process, which is very woo woo, but very practical and scientific too. And they presented the name and a proposed logo to me, which is the name and logo I still use. And I saw it and I burst into tears because I
Yeah.
knew that was my next big adventure. And it has been. It has
Isn't
been.
it
And so we
wonderful
were
that
off.
having that,
Yeah.
having that kind of like just spark just makes
Yeah.
everything flow from there, right?
Yeah. It really is. And it also points to one of the things that I believe with all my heart, and is that community is everything. So having a community around you, and that takes on different meanings at different situations, but having a community around me at that time to help me work through this phase was invaluable. And it made all the difference because you get into trouble when you feel alone. I don't mean when you are alone, but just when you
Mm-hmm.
feel alone or you
Mm-hmm.
feel isolated. Um, now there's days I work alone and I feel completely fulfilled and connected because I have this community. Um, and so that was my first example of that from on my behalf. I've done it for organizations before, but I was always representing them. Now this was for me, and people showed up for me, and that I can't tell you. I'm sure you understand that feeling, having experienced it yourself. Is that makes you feel like anything is possible, and that's the sweet spot of when when you dwell in possibility, which I did not make that up. That was Edith Wharton, I think, or Edna St. Vincent Millay, one of those ladies with an E for first name. But dwell in possibility. And that's the most beautiful place to be because you have hope, you have collaboration, and you have the idea of what's to come.
That's
Love
right.
it.
And
Yeah.
I love that you touched on it's not when you're alone, it's when you feel alone, because
Yeah.
there are many times in our lives where we are surrounded by exactly the right people, but you can't help what you feel and how you feel.
Yeah.
And I love that we acknowledge that fact
Yeah.
that sometimes we just feel alone. So that is
Yes.
a crucial time when you make decisions, right? Life is
Yes.
just a
Yeah.
collection of decisions and outcomes, right? So
It's true. And it's deciding the next right thing.
that's right.
The
That's
next
right.
right
So
thing.
with that in mind,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about, what is PR? I mean, we hear about
Yeah.
all these celebrities all the time about when they get into hot water and they have a great PR team, but that's not all that PR is. And I want to get a
Yeah.
take on, you know, for me specifically,
Yes.
because I am Canadian, and I'm sure it applies to all of our American friends as well. But I just want to have your take on what kind of work do you do? How do
Mhm.
you help small businesses? Because I don't think there is enough information out there for small businesses to realize what kind of a resource PR can be. So I
Yeah.
really want to highlight that.
Oh, absolutely. I love talking about this stuff. So first of all, I think the example you cite is a very specific kind of public relations, and that
Mm,
would be entertainment PR and specifically publicity, the management of publicity, whether getting more or seeking less. Um,
right?
but public relations in general, so it gets a bit confusing, I think, because of the word public, and that has a very specific meaning in the profession. But if you substituted the word audience um, with public and audience
Mm-hmm.
relations, and every audience has different needs for communication and different techniques that would reach them the best. But
Right.
the short answer is public relations is the strategic management and communication of information to target audiences, understanding their needs and required outcomes. And typically on behalf of an organization. And an organization could be one person as a client or a large multinational, and everything in between. So it's all around assessing, strategizing, crafting, and distributing information in a way that's meaningful and authentic. That's my take and my approach, and a lot of my colleagues. And we're governed by a code of ethics through the Canadian Public Relations Society, which is also affiliated with the Public Relations Society of America. So here in Canada, we're CPRS. In the States, they're PRSA. And then also that feeds into the International PR Association. And this code of ethics is the same for all of those. So
Right.
it's we're not quite a profession in the eyes of large P professions like accounting, let's say, but we're pretty close in that there is a code of ethics. There's a college of expertise that we train through, and that accredit the education programs that we participate in.
I but who gets to decide that, right? When you're saying, "Oh, we're not quite a profession," or "we're not," it's such a I don't know. I come from the corporate world too, and it's taken me 3 whole years to kind of detach from that corporate veil, because I've realized that it's very limiting. So now working in the
Yeah.
digital space and working with so many brilliant people that would
Yes.
never be considered a professional
Yeah.
has kind of shown me that everything is relative to what and
Yeah.
whose interpretation are we accepting, right? So
Oh, fascinating. That could be a whole thing
I
you
know
can
it's a whole
get
thing,
into. Um,
right?
I don't want to use the P word, but patriarchy
Sure,
of
sure.
if you think about who were the accountants, who were the physicians, who were the
The
lawyers.
lawyers. I come
And
from
so,
law, so I am well
yeah,
versed in that. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. In that really horrifying article that was recently in the Toronto Star about
Mm,
female lawyers and what they're facing in terms of harassment these days.
oh
Like
yeah.
right now,
Oh yeah.
it was so upsetting to read. But so I think, and and this is not a blame thing, it's an explanation thing with
For
a
sure.
teensy bit of frustration thrown in. But
For sure. For
we've
sure.
got decades and millennia, really, because I mean, Shakespeare talked about lawyers, although he had a female lawyer, Portia, in The Merchant of Venice, didn't he?
Oh,
So,
that's true. Yeah, yeah.
but so we talk about, you know, centuries of ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And so to anticipate and expect that they would be eradicated in even 2 or 3 generations is, you know, when you think about it that way, it's overreaching a bit. Having said that, I still want to push it forward. I still think it needs to be in so many areas. But this is one example of, you know, at least I'd say at least once a month, if someone says, "Oh, you know, what do you do?" And I say, and they, "Oh, so you're a publicist," or "Oh, like hacks and flax."
Right.
And I say, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, do I want to be like really pissy and uptight about this and kind of explain, or I usually use humor to deflect.
Which it's such a polite way of, you know, expressing what your actual opinion might be on the fact. So I commend you for that. I have no patience half the time, and I just kind of cut straight to the chase. And we get a lot of that too as an online business manager. People have no idea what I do, and that's fair.
Sure.
There could be a lot of types of, so I take the time to explain. But the moment they try to kind of like minimize or summarize to the bones, you know, all the work that you put in day out, that's when you just have to cut it off, because I think it's something that's been ingrained in us. It's as a woman, be nice
and take up less space.
Don't argue, because then you're too aggressive,
right?
Or don't be bossy. But if you're in the male space, it's okay to be bossy because it shows that you know what you're doing, right? So I've just been trying to. Thankfully, I have to say my clients are the best. I have never encountered male or female to kind of undermine me to the point where it's kind of like, is it a gender thing? Is it? No, never happened. But I do see it in contact with other people or other businesses. And my instinct is to remove myself. But I've realized over time that that's not furthering this issue. It's just placating it, and it's, you know, so
and you're right. I mean, we really need to be there for each other, and there are fortunately lots of great people, lots of great men who are with us on that
allies
issue. And allies, exactly. You know, it depends on how egregious the commentary is. I find humor is very helpful if I kind of assess that, you know, like, you know, in the old days when you'd get, I got a lot of little ladies. Like my first big job was working for not just a chartered accounting firm, but the national office of a chartered accounting firm, where partners were God, right?
Right.
And I remember getting a little lady. I'm 5'10", so there's nothing little about me. And
same.
So they said, little lady, and I would do things like, "Oh, you did not just say that. Come on," like sort of funny. You know, I would josh them out of it. But there are circumstances where you say, you know, I know you don't mean ill will, but when you say something like that, it actually diminishes what I do for a living, and I know that would never be your intention. Or some, you know, or some version of that, because I still try the honey versus vinegar approach.
I know
most of the time, and then unless they're a total a-hole, and then
right.
Then I know I'm not going to convert
because I have to give my toddler. I know, but I give my toddler that patience, right? That's how I speak to my toddler. So it's almost like, why am I giving you that same attention and patience when I need to give my child that? There's a finite amount of energy that I have every day, and I feel like And you're right. You're 100% right. You know, honey over vinegar for sure. I just
But yeah,
sometimes I
and
will
you pick
hold
your
my
battles,
tongue.
right,
Yeah.
Adriana? Like you pick your
Yeah.
battles. That's the thing. There
Yeah.
are people situations you think, you know what, this is not worth. You
No.
smile and just kind of say, okay, see you later, or extricate yourself.
Yes, if it's for me, I am more likely to hold my tongue, but if I see it happening to somebody else, my rage just like
Yeah,
overfills my head and
yeah,
it's just out there now and that's
I
on you
know.
now. So,
It's
you know,
tough.
I
It's
know it's
tough.
funny and I do deflect with humor a lot too, but it's hard. It's hard when you're trying to get there. And I always wish this for everybody. I am at the point where I can run my business and pick who I work with, which I realize how lucky I am to do that and
Right.
how it means I've reached a certain milestone. So I understand that not everybody you can't start out that way, right? You can't because you're literally building from zero, right? So you have to kind of take in what you can and mold it to what you
Hmm.
can. But now I feel like I'm at the point where if I think that you're going to be more of a problem than you are a solution or a teammate or a coworker or then it's out. It's like I don't have to be there. It's such a good place to be at.
The first time you can fire a client
Yes.
because it's not a good fit anymore,
It's mind-blowing.
the best.
Yes, it's
The
mind-blowing.
best. And that's
It
usually after long hours and, time of
Yes.
figuring it out and
Yes.
trying to address it. But oh, the minute you
Yeah.
do that, it's like, yes.
Be like,
Yeah.
this is it. This is how I want to run it. Yeah. And I have to say this, you probably have some really good professional opinions on this, but I was talking to a friend and she was thinking of opening up her own business and I'm always like, yes, do it. Don't
Yep.
think about it. You're going to kick yourself for not doing it earlier. But I was saying to her, when I last year I had this kerfuffle happen and my website got deleted. So I had about 2 days and I can't believe we pulled it off. I had help from some wonderful copywriters and, you know, a coach too. So it's just, it all came together 2 days. I was wowed and impressed and amazed. And then I said, you know what, this time I wasn't afraid to put in the pinks and the girly things and the flowers that I wanted. Whereas before I was so self-conscious about the fact that you can't be too girly because people won't want to work with you because they're going to think you're less than and they're not going to take you seriously. And then this time I was like, let them. Those are not people that I want to work with. Right? If you want to reduce me down to
You
that type of
raise,
a vibe, let them.
that's so interesting, Adriana, because I think what you're actually speaking to is authenticity and owning your authenticity. And
Yeah.
that is actually, I believe, the best part of your business and your brand is who you are, what you stand for, your values, and then living those, demonstrating those. And because, when you talk about brand, since I mentioned the word brand, I'll mention this. The idea of branding and marketing, in fact, is not to attract everyone. It's to attract the right ones.
That's right.
And
That's right.
so,
Thank you.
so by being an authentic example of yourself and your values and the business you want to craft, changing your website, for example, because I sense I see some of the background, here on the screen. It's beautiful, it's soothing, it's appealing. I want to look closer at it. Um, Other people may feel differently, and that's okay because maybe they're not the best client for you,
That's right.
and maybe you're not the best person for them, and that's okay. There's room for everybody, I believe. And
That's
so
right.
attracting the right kind of person is really where you're at, and that starts with a sense of authenticity. And authenticity sounds so simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy. If we can understand the difference, is that idea around we know exactly what to do, but we get bogged down in the emotions. We get bogged down in what it means. So in that sense, it's not easy, but it is pretty straightforward. And it all
Yeah.
starts with authenticity, I believe, and also that's how you feel your best too.
I love that you're saying exactly what I've been feeling in the last couple of months, I guess last couple
Oh,
of years. So
great.
it's really great to
Yes.
hear. It's validating. So
Oh, I'm so glad.
we've got a
Yeah.
comment here from Carrie Lynn. Carrie Lynn's also a host actually on the network, and she's got a show on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. She is wonderful. She's one of my favorite people, and she says great conversation. Thank you so much, Carrie Lynn, and
Oh,
I'm so
hi,
glad you
Carrie
you
Lynn.
got
Thank
to
you.
tune in.
Thank
You,
you.
if you
That's
love the
amazing.
woo woo, if you love the woo woo
Yes.
stuff, Jane, you're gonna love her show.
Okay, you're
Um,
totally going to tell me how to access this and other shows.
yes, yes,
And
I
sorry, there's
will.
a siren. I live on a busy street near near the police station, and so
Yeah,
a siren just went by. So,
that's okay. That's
uh,
okay. Yeah, it's I believe it's called oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on it.
well,
Telephone
we'll find it,
Telephone to the
and
Dead. Yeah,
yeah.
it's wonderful. You'll see it on her page too. Actually, I think it's Carrie Lynn's page commenting. This is actually her Facebook page, Psychic Medium Carolyn Shilhorn.
Okay, great,
She's wonderful, and she's such a calming presence, but also an abundance of knowledge. So I think you would love that.
good. I'm writing her name down.
Yeah, oh, good. I will send you the link. Don't worry, Jane.
Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
Carolyn, oh, thanks. I adore you too. Spirit Switchboard, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yay!
It's a Monday, Carolyn. Sorry. Apologies. My brain's still on running on a Sunday, but
That's great. Thanks,
yeah.
Carrie Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to our conversation that we had before we went live. I do love the radio station because people are very authentic in the shows that they present to, which we don't have a corporate agenda, and it's so freeing that we can literally talk to anybody and about
Yep.
anything. I mean, yeah, we've got your, courtesy, and let's not be completely, unprofessional live on air, sure, but there is no like, please push this and please push that, and you
Right.
know
Well, independent radio, right?
exactly. But you, as a person that is very familiar with the media, I feel like you would understand how important that
Yep.
is, and how much creative
I do.
control it I don't think creative control of the individual exists anymore. I think that's hard, right?
It's interesting. Um, it is hard, and we talk about a big part of public relations is working with the media, collaborating with the media, and that landscape has changed so much. And for example, in my community, there are about 6 radio stations, and one of them has news. One of them.
Just one.
And that's like Hamilton has 600,000 people.
Right.
Just one. Yeah,
Just
and
one.
Hamilton has 600,000 people, and then the area around it is, certainly close to a million.
Yeah.
And so, that's a challenge because a lot of them are owned corporately,
Yeah.
and local news is really struggling right now.
Yeah.
It really is. So,
Yeah.
I think it's very important to encourage and support programming like this one
Yeah.
that we're on and the network itself, because that's how voices flourish.
That's right. So, speaking of, we're actually past the halfway mark here. So, for anybody that's just tuning in, you are listening to Negotiating Happiness, and we are live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And if you want to kick back and watch us on your big screen TV, check us out on Roku TV. Yeah, and we're just talking. I'm here with Jane Allison from Dovetail Community in Hamilton, and we're just discussing PR myths and branding, and kind of how to flourish out of failure, which is probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about. And we've just left off here
Yeah.
talking about branding yourself, and Carrie Lynn is saying it is hard to brand yourself. You really need to be clear with who you are and feel brave and comfortable to be who you are. Yes, thank you. We were just talking about authenticity.
It's true.
And sometimes when we ourselves don't know who we are. So who are you in business? It could be somebody that's slightly different than who you are at home because of these
Mm-hmm.
parameters that
Yep.
you've put into place, the people you work with, the community that you're in. So it is very hard to be clear, and it is very hard to be brave to, like I said, put those pinks out there and those flowers. It doesn't mean you don't understand and can't set up entire, platforms, and you don't have 15 years experience in trying to make
Yep.
operations work for various businesses, because I do. But if you want to reduce somebody down to how they present themselves without really looking into it, then that is a mistake that they're making, not a mistake that you're making as the person who's branding themselves. And it's hard to get to that point, I think.
It is. It takes a lot of self-worth, and you really have to work at it. And listen, it's not something that you have 100% 24/7 either. So there's moments
Sure.
of where you falter.
Yeah.
But I think, the whole branding exercise that people go through professionally is also something very impactful personally, and it's
Yeah.
about digging deep onto some questions that sometimes it's okay it feels more comfortable answering as an organization. It's a bit removed. And so you can be
Yeah.
quite pragmatic about it. But when you're talking about yourself,
Yeah.
you get bogged down with what you think you're supposed to be, or what
That's
you
right.
like to be,
Right.
or what you never think you're going to be, but you aspire to be, and all of these
Right.
things. And so it's very hard. Like those are those conversations with yourself or trusted people that allows you to kind of elicit that. And listen, hey, therapy helps everything. So certainly, that's if that's for you, that's certainly the
I think
best personal
everybody needs
branding.
therapy.
I think it
Everybody.
would be
You
great to
can't
have a
convince
person
me
on.
otherwise.
I'm with you, and I think if we could have someone on call, be
Mhm.
fantastic.
Mhm.
Fantastic. I
Yeah,
know.
that's true. It's
Yeah,
true. What are some other PR myths that you keep hearing
sure.
from people?
Well, one of my favorites is, you know, people say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'll say, "Oh, I'm in public relations and communications." And they say, "Oh, I would love to do that. I love people." Okay, and again, that's one of those moments where you think, "Okay, do I explain it to them or just let it go?" And
Right.
while liking to interact with people is a good skill, certainly, but the gist of um, public relations and communications, focuses kind of on two areas. One is writing. You have to be a really good writer.
Yeah.
Craft messages, craft documentation, craft speeches and media releases, and distill information into accessible an accessible format.
That's right.
That's one skill. And then the other skill is a good strategic mind that really understands what an organization, or seeks to understand what an organization's goals are. Because the big thing about another myth about public relations is that it's one thing, that
Mhm.
it's a newsletter, or it's
Mhm.
social media, or it's
Mhm.
teaching people how to be on camera, or it's making a speech. It's all of those things and not one of those things.
Right.
It's choosing the best tools to communicate with the audience that allows the organization to meet its goals. So in other words, you don't want to do a newsletter or a blog um, or social media or TikTok just because it's a smart idea or everyone is doing it.
Right.
You do it because you have a goal to reach a certain demographic with weekly bite-sized pieces of information in order to help them understand that um, you need to apply for student funding if you want to get scholarships. I'm picking this out of the air.
Right. Right.
Um, I'm actually working on a project now that is a scholarship project, and they're looking at how they communicate.
Mm.
And it's, what they thought was how isn't actually how now. And so
Right.
that's proving to be quite interesting. And so it's really that those are a couple of big myths: what the job actually is, and then how you want to do it and how you do it well. And it's always about the organization's goals. And my
Yeah.
third thing is, and this is a personal pet peeve of mine more than anything, but when you're doing your job properly, very little of it should be about you as a
Right.
practitioner.
Right.
I, there are always PR people who make the story about them, and to me, that I don't like that approach. I don't support that approach. But there's room for everybody, and if you want that
Mhm.
kind of person working for you, great. But I personally don't think. I think PR people should generally be fairly invisible to
Mhm.
the audiences that they're trying to connect with on the behalf of the organization, um, because it's not about you.
Yeah, I always thought
Yeah.
that that was very strange, and I thought that the dynamic of that would change if it was like in-house PR or if it was third-party PR. I do think that that's a little bit different, just from my observations alone.
Mm-hmm.
But I forgot what I was going to say, and I was going to agree with you on something, and I
I
completely
think it's
forgot.
just the making it be about you. Like it's the
Yeah.
self-aggrandizement that's, then you're deflecting from your goal.
Right. And there's also a really big difference between having a personal brand and like an organizational brand, right?
Yep.
And a lot of us, I think, are just used to, again, the sensationalism of what we see in tabloids and, oh, that's PR or that's, which is not quite it. I remember having a conversation probably a couple of months ago with a business friend as well. She runs her agency, I think, out of I want to say Manitoba. I might be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
Saskatchewan. She's been on the show a couple times. She's probably gonna laugh at me, but um, she travels
The
a lot too. So
prairies.
it's hard. It's hard to keep track of where she is. She travels a lot too. She's got a wonderful setup. But she was talking to me about how she engaged a PR firm to help her in, they're getting a lot of traction in the right kind of media, right? So in articles, magazines, the right blogs, the right everything. And it's bringing her the exposure that she needs because she really does have a wonderful story to share of how she
Mm-hmm.
started her business. So I'm really happy for her to do that. And until I talked to her, it wasn't really even on my radar that that could be such a wonderful resource. And I just remember what I was going to say too. And this kind of is connected because she's very into social media. She's got a really good following on her personal brand. Her agency has a decent following, but her personal brand has a lot bigger following, and it's all organic, which is very important. I think the whole sensationalism of becoming viral has ruined the
Mm.
idea that you have to have strategy, is what you were saying. You have to have strategy behind all of these efforts that you're putting into social media, your blogs, your newsletters. There has to be a goal there that needs to be reached. You can't just start throwing things on the wall and seeing what sticks, because you're not going to get the results that you wanted. And I think the fact that everybody wants to be viral, and I am not one of those people, and I will say it right now, the followers for me don't equate business or great connections all the time. So I'm super happy with my following, my 760 followers. Thank you all. Because from that I've been able to have such rich connections.
Yeah.
I've gotten so much more engagement with the right people out of there. And I can't necessarily say that I've always had a strategy, but I've held on to the whole like authenticity and this is who I'm targeting. But if I were to start doing crazy dances on TikTok and seeing if I, become viral or not, that is completely out of left field, not for my audience, not for me. And even the people that are going to interact with it are not going to be my target demographic. So it doesn't help me that as a service provider that works one-on-one with businesses to do that. And I feel like people miss that because they just want to be viral. And I always ask them why. And they just
Yep.
think it equates customers or clients. And I said, that's not true, right? Like that's probably one of the things that I've noticed so far.
It's true, and it gets back to what we were chatting about earlier about attracting the right client, not every
Right.
client, or
Right.
attracting the right follower, not every follower. And so,
Right.
if you had 1,000 followers and 999 of them had no interest in what you were doing, they just thought you were kind of funny. The
Right.
one who said, I want to work with Adriana because
Mm-hmm.
I can see that she's got this approach to things. That's the one you want, and that's worth all the
Right.
other $9.99. So it's really important to kind of figure out what your North Star is in this
Right.
quest.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're planning PR, public relations and communications, and it's like a communications plan. For example, when I do one, like they're 25, 30 pages. So they're not meager in terms of the robust. There's tons of research in looking at these, answering these very questions, and then all kinds of different strategies to address them. Very few of them may be, public or
Right.
media or your more traditional things. Um,
Right.
One of the best things for corporate or not-for-profit clients, organizational clients, is this idea that I put in just about every plan, which is the idea of champions.
Right.
Identify, we call them influencers now,
Right.
pardon me, but that ends up kind of ascribing them to the social media influence realm. And when I say champion, I mean they could come out in any room, but identify those people who would love to give a testimonial, who sit on a lot of committees and are able to kind of chat about you when appropriate. These are the
Right.
people that you would keep up to date about everything that's going on just because. And then every once in a while, something happens and you hear from someone and said, oh, I was talking to so-and-so champion and they suggested X and I'm calling you. And it ends up work, donation, collaboration, any one of those things. That's a very behind the scenes kind of thing. It's not very public
That's right.
necessarily.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things in that. And that gets back to the strategic aspect that public relations and communications has to have. You have to be going
Yeah.
somewhere and connecting to something. Yeah.
Yeah. There has to be a purpose behind it.
Right.
Um, is
Exactly.
there any other PR myths that you want to share with us?
I think that, listen, I love a good movie, television, bingeable series. But I
Yeah.
think it's one of those, the idea of the image of public relations people and reporters have been very, they're used often in storytelling because they're fascinating um, professions and they
Right.
get access to people's lives and situations that maybe are a bit
Yeah.
outside the norm. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of cool. So we get that. But the true aspect of the work is, it's a lot of work at your desk. It's a lot of talking on the phone. It's a lot of thinking about stuff. The old
Mm-hmm.
three martini lunch of the former, the Mad
Right.
Men, just like Mad Men had
Yeah.
took a run at advertising.
Right.
There and you realize now, of course, that life doesn't exist anymore. So too with a lot of the old ways of viewing public relations,
Right.
um, still are being put to bed.
Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
similar
So I
to
think that
some of the other.
we socialize a lot.
Yeah. It's very similar to the other professions as well, right? They sensationalize how law really is in courts or behind the scenes, like you get like the really fun drama filled things, but then when you actually read a court transcript or you sit in on a court matter, you're like, wow, I could fall asleep right now, So
Right.
it's kind of funny
Right.
how it doesn't work the same way, but yeah, I completely agree with that. And the landscape
What
keeps changing, and if you're not changing, it means you're not keeping up with it. So that's a problem.
Well, and I think evolution of evolving as people, like if you're
Mm-hmm.
not, back to this question of failure. This is actually perfect timing. If you're not failing on the regular, I don't mean big fails, but if you're not
Sure,
kind of
sure.
figuring it out and thinking, okay, that didn't work on a regular basis, you're
Yeah.
not trying enough new things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that's really important, I think. For example, I love to cook. I do. It's very, meditative for me. And all I'm focused on is that at the moment. So it's kind of stress relieving. My brain quiets down. But the interesting aspect of the way I cook is, and I think a lot of people can be like this, is I'm not afraid to try anything once.
Mm-hmm.
So I just go for it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You have to order take out. We have a
Yeah.
local, like a pizzeria around here called like Pizza, and I think the phone number is 967-1111 is sort
Of
of the
course it
slogan.
is.
And like, what's the worst that can happen? You have to phone 967-1111. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the spirit in which I think a lot of our professional aspects in terms of growing and changing and trying new things
Yeah.
really needs to be like, so what if it fails?
That's right. That's right. And I can see here Carolyn is
Another thing
agreeing
not
with
to
you.
try, at least. And yeah, it's true. It's just, I think the idea of like Malcolm Gladwell, a boy from Kitchener Waterloo, thank you very much, who talked about the idea of mastery and the 10,000 hours. And,
Right.
The 10,000 hours, you've got to keep trying and keep plugging away and doing new things and seeing what sticks and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, okay, next. And
Yeah.
it's so important, but it also keeps it really exciting. It can be frustrating too, but I think it just keeps it really exciting. And so feeling that sense of life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
Right. Right. Which is
Yeah.
very
Which
true.
was
I
my mantra
completely
when I
agree with
started
that.
this company. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what makes you happy, Jane? What keeps pushing all of this forward for you day in and day out? I'm not talking about like Jane as a, daughter, partner, sibling, mother, friend, just you, your individual you. What makes this worth it for you? Like, what do you do to kind of unwind and be like, yeah, this is the life?
It's it's a twofold answer. I think it's the people in
Isn't it
my life.
always?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But people, like people, the connections in your life that matter are what make the trip worthwhile.
Right.
So, and I will say that about the clients, I'm honored to collaborate with and help them achieve their goals. And they in turn help me achieve my goals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really plugging into that and having authentic connection. That's a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And less seriously, but I would say as important is I've got a fairly rich creative life, meaning I'm not artistic, but I'm creative. So
Okay.
I plug away at all these different kind of pursuits of, making clothes, and I love to decorate, and I'm a geek about architecture and housing, and listen, during the pandemic, I discovered crocheting, which,
Oh.
and I'm telling you, you're sitting there, my brain is quiet, my hands are busy, I'm watching my shows, I'm relaxed, but I'm still producing something
Right.
of beauty, hopefully, or at least function. Or one of those, well, next, one of those failures, but still. But so I think anything that gets into that part of my brain, like I'll tell you, my happy places are, Michael's craft store and a Home Depot. Like it's
Yeah.
just
You
throwing
could
a
do some
fabric
real
land and
damage. You could do
real
some real
damage.
damage, like fabric. My mom's a tailor, so I've been going to Fabric Land since I was a wee girl. So let me tell you, you can make some damage there. That's for sure. I guess for our
And so
American
thinking
friends,
about those
that's
things.
oh, there's some lag here. Sorry about that. I was
That's
just
like
saying,
Joanne's fabric.
yes, Joanne's.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. That's like Joanne's if anybody needs to equate what that's like. But I think Joanne's has way better selection though.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well,
Well, it's
Carrie
just
Lynn.
access to, they have critical mass and they have more
Yeah.
ability to, I think, fund things. But I have family in Maine that I like to see every summer if I can.
Ooh.
And Joanne's is always a stop. Let's just say that.
Oh, I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't. I don't blame you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or Hobby Lobby. I could go to Hobby Lobby all the time. We don't have Hobby
I
Lobby
kn-
here, friends. We
no, but we
suffer.
have we do have Michael's, thank the Lord.
Yes, we do have
Yeah.
Michael's, and I can definitely do some damage in
Yep.
there. But I've kind of reined it all in. I do like to be creative and artistic myself, but it's it's hard when you've got a little one and the business
Yeah.
and right. So,
Well, it's the
but that
soul, the whole thing. You can have everything, just not all at the same time.
yes, that's true. So even
So,
Carrie Lynn here says, "My heart is smiling. This conversation is what my spirit needs today." Thank you, Adriana and Jade. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, Carrie Lynn.
oh,
Yeah,
that's so
she's
lovely. Thank you,
wonderful.
Carrie Ann. Thank
Carrie Lynn
you.
is one of my favorite people. So if anybody wants
Oh,
to check out
great.
her page, go for it. She's lovely. Also, Jane, I just wanted to tell everybody that they can reach you on Instagram at dovetail_Jane. And
Correct.
I've already posted in the comments, but if you want to find Jane at her on her website, is it dovetailcommunity.com. That's
Yes.
dovetailcommunity.com. I enjoyed our conversation so much, but we're actually out of time.
I
So
can't believe
that just
that,
kind
but
of flew by,
yeah.
right? We'd
Well,
love to
thank you
have
so
you
much for
back,
having
Jane.
me.
Yeah, no, thank
Anytime.
you. We'd love to have you back, and we want to hear more about, kind of what projects you've got going on in the community,
Sure.
and want to hear more about the kind of work that you do, because I think it is really important for people to know, what PR does, what it can't do, or just to have some realistic expectations, even, as a business owner, or maybe somebody who potentially works for somebody that maybe needs to have that sort of a guidance in their life or in their
Yes.
work life, maybe,
Yeah.
right? So thank you so much, and to
Oh,
everybody that tuned in. Everybody was wonderful with comments, and we are going to try and go live on Instagram as well every week. And I will do my best to have a new guest every week, but sometimes you guys might get some replays. It's just life. So it happens. Um, and thank you so much to the platform that I've been given here on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And if you guys want to check out some of our previous episodes as well, you can find us on SoundCloud or on our Facebook page or Instagram. We'll post the replays for sure. Have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody, and thank you again, Jane.
thank you, Adriana. Such a pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.